This is Steve Harris from Iron Maiden and British Lion. You listen to Andrew McCasebit from Scars and Guitars.
G'day everybody. This episode features a chat with the legendary bassist and vocalist Glenn Hughes. Now the catalyst for the chat is due to a run of Australian shows, and I'll put a link in the episode description if you want to know more about them. For the rest of you, this chat is as much of a deep dive as I could manage within it. Around about 18 or 19 minutes or so of a chat with the great man. We discuss working with Gary Moore on Run for Cover, memories of recording Seventh Star with Tony Iommi in his almost solo gigs with Black Sabbath, Hughes' Thrall collaborating with the Red Hot Chili Peppers members, plenty of conversation about bass guitar, and also Deep Purple. So here he is, Glenn Hughes. How have I call them Zoomers, but how have the interviews been going?
Oh my God. Well, first of all, everything I've done with Australian media has been great. Everybody's been really kind and asking some cool questions, and it's all been good.
Fantastic. Okay. Look, I'll get the obvious question out of the way. So you're coming down here and you're playing Burn, okay, in full, I understand. So the question... No, it's not in full. By the way, that should never have been promoted that way. I'm honoring and celebrating the Burn album, but I'm not playing the entire album. I'm playing 5 songs that are, in my opinion, the hottest tracks off the album. So, and then alongside that will be other Mark III, Mark IV, Deep Purple classics. It's an evening of Deep Purple. Okay, gotcha. Well, I'm still going to ask a question about Burn anyway, given it was your first album with Deep Purple. Now, look, it's really hard to isolate one aspect of your career and say, is it the most significant? But,
right.
I mean, you've done a ton of interviews, I get that, and you've probably been asked this before, but I'll ask the question anyway. Do you think this was the catalyst? Is this the biggest album in your career, so to speak, for the rest of your career to follow?
Well, it's been the biggest as far as sales, you know. Is it my favorite album I've ever done? I don't think so. There are others, you know, that, especially with my solo material and Trapeze and Black Country Communion. But yeah, I'm really proud to be part of Burn, and you know, it's a great album. So that's why I'm promoting it.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah. And was this your first time that you played with David Coverdale?
Yeah. I was there when we auditioned him. He came from the north of England, and he'd never really done anything quite like that ever. So it was an interesting process.
I found a quote online where it mentions that you love him and you've been through thick and thin for so long. So what is it that makes you both click?
Well, we're both kids from the north of England, and we both kind of speak the same language, and we were raised, in the same way. We like the same kind of music, soulful, bluesy rock music, as you know. And we got along really well. And he's a very funny guy. So that's really important to me.
Yeah. You've written many exceptional bass lines. And I've got to say just quickly, I'll just take this moment. I'm a singing bass player, and
okay.
You're pretty much it. You're pretty much the guy. You and Mark King from Level 42.
Oh, thank you. Mark's great.
Yeah, and with you guys, when I'm doing what it is that I do, I say, okay, well, I can't measure up to you. It's impossible because you're pretty much the alpha and the omega, as I say, along with Mark. But thank you for doing what you're doing. But I've got to compliment you on your bass line to Sail Away as well.
Thank you.
Is that?
Thank you. Yeah, I love that track, by the way. Would that song have been written if it would have been Mark II? I don't think so. It really worked well for David and I, and that's a cool bass line. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem at all. When you're singing with that beautiful soulful voice that you've got, and you're basically shredding on the bass as well,
right.
The question isn't how do you do it, but how do you adapt a bass line around that vocal that you've got?
I write on guitar, but before I finish the song, I play bass to what I've written to figure out, can I actually sing this live? There's only a couple of songs in my repertoire, 50 years, that I haven't been able to do that. So now I make it a point, can I do this live? So that's a good answer, I believe.
Yeah, actually, I'll share this quickly. I was singing and playing. I play covers, you see. So
Sure.
at first I was adapting my vocal to the bass line, and it was quite challenging, very challenging, I've got to say, because as you know, the bass lines groove. They're not modal.
You're right.
So yeah, you got to dig into them. But then when I started singing and playing on the acoustic guitar first, and then attempting it on the bass, it was a lot easier. Does that process make sense to you?
It does make sense to me. And it's, again, for me, it's the notes I don't play that are as important as the notes I do play.
Yes.
It really is.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, indeed. Recording and working with Gary Moore on Run for Cover, what are your memories?
Well, Gary was my closest friend in the late 70s and very, very early 80s. And it was fun. But I wasn't the man I am today then, like, if you know what I'm talking about. I was a bit of a little crazy, if you will. And it really didn't gel with what he wanted. And by the way, I wasn't out of my mind, high and shit, but he wanted something a little different. And so we partied, and that was the end of that.
You are one of the certainly most prominent people to not just survive but thrive since your sobriety. So is there anything, as I say, it's really tough to sort of frame these things as questions, but what can you tell me about your experiences post sobriety with regards to your creativity? Did you find did you have to work a lot harder on that front?
No, well, let me tell you a story here. When I came out of treatment, I had to find someone to work with, call a sponsor, And he told me in my kitchen, you will go on to write better songs, sing better, everything will be better. I'm going, well, how can that be? I think I've recorded my best work. And you know something? Since I've been sober, I've written 16 solo albums or something like that, and worked with a lot of great people, as you know. And I believe I'm getting better every day. So that's really important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, indeed. Yeah. What about your fondest memories of working with Tommy Bolin?
Well, he was when he passed the audition, and before he started auditioning, I walked up and whispered in his ear, "If you don't get the gig, you're coming home with me." But he got the gig, and he came with me, and he stayed at my home for quite some time, and we were very, very, very close. And he was a beautiful, kind, very sweet young man who could play guitar like nobody.
Well, another killer guitarist that you work with, Tony Iommi on Seventh Star. Now that's a killer album that often gets glossed over, but what are your recollections of working on him with that?
Tony and I have been friends since 1970, and it was gonna happen at some point where we did some playing together. So for me coming in there, it was called the Tony Iommi solo album, but his manager Don Ard and Sharon's father insisted we call it Black Sabbath, which Tony wasn't happy about, and I'm not really writing that kind of lyric, So I enjoyed making the album regardless of what it was called.
Hey, Glenn, what, in your view, why don't you think, I frame this, when I say success, I think just work with me when I say this, but Hughes Thrall deserved more success, commercial success than it achieved. So what's your view on why it wasn't more of a success in that way?
That's a great question, and it's difficult to answer because what I don't like to talk about too much is my behavior from the past. But it would appear that Pat, Thrall, and I weren't doing all we could to make sure the album was a success. Let's just say we were sidetracked, and it was difficult to tour when you're sidetracked. And CBS weren't really happy about that. But the album, in my opinion, is one of the greatest records I've ever made.
Yeah, agree. By the way, is that the most underappreciated aspect of your career? Do you think
that album for sure? I really do.
David Lowy and the Dead Daisies. What was your experience like working with David?
Well, I got a call from the manager, an Australian guy called Dave Edwards, it would have been January of 2019, and he said, "Would you like to take a lunch with David Lowe? He'd like to, ask some questions." I said, "Sure, why not?" I knew all about David, of course, and I met him in the spring at the Sunset Marquee in Hollywood, and he asked me if I'd like to write some songs for the Dead Daisies, and maybe I would like to make an album with them. So I went home and wrote 3 songs, and we went into a studio in Hollywood called Sunset Sound Recorders in August of 2019, and the songs were Unspoken, Holy Ground, and another song I can't remember. And they went really well, so that's when he asked me if I'd like to come on board and do some shows. I said, well, why not?
I had a good chat to John Corabi about David Lowe, and he went to he wanted to impress the point that the Dead Daisies is not rich guy has lots of money to start a band and invite rock star friends. Is that something you'd corroborate?
David Lowe is a very decent fellow. He loves playing guitar. He really does love, and he really works tirelessly at it. As you know, he's a businessman, from 9 to 5, but when he puts his guitar on, he's always looking for another angle to make him sound better, and he really works hard, David. And I don't see any ego with him whatsoever. And he was very, very good to me. We had a lot of fun together, really, really good time.
Hey, another lesser known collaboration is that with the Red Hot Chili Peppers guys, so John Frusciante and Chad Smith, and I think was it one track? Was it Nights in White Satin? How did that come about?
Yeah, I got asked to do it for a movie, and then I asked Chad and John if they'd like to participate. So they came in. I mean, they were really good friends of mine anyway. Chad has played on 4 of my albums at this point. So normally he plays on all the work I've done. So John and Chad are really close friends, and I really do appreciate them very much.
Mm. You've worked with the who's who. There's very few people you haven't worked with that are prominent. But the question is, as far as you're concerned, what's the key to successfully integrating into all these different setups that you've been a part of?
Can you repeat that, my friend?
You've worked with the who's who. In other words,
right.
It's easier to mention who you haven't worked with than who you have worked with. But the thing is, it's all been musically successful. So as a musician, I listen and I go, that works and it's fantastic. But there's a lot of egos involved, and there's a lot of people that may want things their own way, but you seem to make things work in every situation. So my question is, as far as you're concerned, how do you approach integrating into all of these different environments?
Well, number one, I don't particularly want to work with people that if they're like acting strange and stuff, I pretty much it won't work for me. I've got to be friends with someone to work with them now. I can't just walk into a situation cold and do that. It's not the way I work, but I always figure out it's just going to be a good thing for me, a learning curve, another challenge or another moment to play with my friends. So I choose very carefully who I'm going to work with. I think that's the way to go.
As a bassist, have you ever worked with a drummer, like a very prominent drummer, and thought, gosh, this isn't going to work?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I have. I can't tell you who.
Oh, I'd love to. Hey, did you ever work with, you probably did, but Cozy Powell?
Yes, I did an album called Phenomena with him in 1985. Yeah, he's a good friend, Cozy. Yeah, the Phenomena, yeah.
Yeah. How did you get involved in the rock opera albums?
Oh, pretty much as a favor to Mel Galley's brother. He was putting this thing together, and if Mel was going to be involved with it, then I thought, well, I'll join in. So I did that for Mel.
Did you get along well with Cozy?
Very well, yeah. He was he wasn't born in the Birmingham area, but he spent a lot of time in the Birmingham area. So, yeah, we were good friends. Great drummer, really good drummer.
Hey, these things are always over way too quick, Glenn. Have I got a few more time for a few more questions, or have you got to go to the next one?
I'm good. Another couple of minutes.
Sweet. Okay. I've talked a little bit about your bass playing. you're probably the first person, though, to really develop what I'd term a lead bass style. And I think you understand what I'm saying when I mention that. So did that come from somewhere, or is that all your own?
Well, I used to play guitar for 5 or 6 years before I started playing bass, so I was really involved in learning how to play guitar first of all. And when I switched to bass guitar, at first I kept it very simple, and then I started to, investigate, playing lead lines on the bass guitar. So it's important for me to express myself that way.
Your 1977 solo debut is very funky and very soulful. Yeah, is that one of your favorite albums in your canon?
It is. The first album I made solo was that album, Play Me Out. It's an orchestrated record. I had some girl singers with me, and it was a lot of fun. Really enjoyed that album.
Yeah. What's your preferred? I understand you play Fender Precision basses or jazz basses these days, but is that your preferred instrument?
It is. I get all lovely people asking me, "Can I send you a bass?" And really nice them to offer, But for me, I've always been a P or a J guy, so I've got quite a few of them, and it's pretty much all I play. Now, of course, I've got my own Orange O bass guitar. I don't know if you've seen it.
I'll check it out. No, I haven't. No. Okay, cool. Yeah.
I'll be bringing it with me to Australia. If you see me, I'll be playing it there too.
Yeah, I'll see you at the back room in Brisbane. Yeah.
Good.
Look out for it. Yeah. I had a couple of recent conversations with Steve Harris, and I was badgering him about status basses, which I play, which are from Colchester. Yeah. Have you played the status basses before?
I have, but I didn't. It wasn't my thing.
Yeah, you've got to be certainly looking for that sound, no doubt.
Yeah. Right, exactly.
Yeah. I love the fact that you play with your fingers. But have you ever gone as far as experimenting with, say, Larry Graham style slapping and popping techniques?
I have, and I do it sometimes, but I wasn't born that way to start playing bass. If I never played guitar, if I started out as a bass player like my friend Andy Fraser, it would have been a lot easier. But and by the way, when you hear my bass playing, I think you can hear a guy playing with his fingers, but I'm actually playing with a pick. That's the way it seems to me.
Okay, right. Yeah. Sorry, yeah. Wow, I haven't. Yeah, it sounds. Your dexterity indicates that you play with your fingers as a bassist. That's the way I've always interpreted it.
That's a good thing.
Yeah. Gosh, as I say, these things are over way too quickly. This is the second time I've spoken to you, and it's been fantastic on both occasions, Glenn, I've got to say.
Thank you, man.
So when you look at the future, nobody's got a crystal ball, but what's your greatest ambition for your career?
To keep creating new music. I mean, at some point it'll stop, but not anytime soon. I think the new album I've made could be my finest ever album, and I can't wait for the world to hear it. So I'm a songwriter. That's what I do pretty much every day. I'm writing a new piece of music, maybe a couple of bars or something, or a chord change or whatever, but I like making new music.
We love listening to it, Glenn. And on that note, thanks very much for the chat.
Thank you, Andy.
I'll salute you from the crowd, brother. I love your bass playing.
You come back and shake my hand.
Okay, no worries. I'll talk to John. Thank you very much, brother. I really appreciate the offer.
Thank you, Andy. Have a great day. Thank you so much.
All right, what did you think? Never enough time. I'd need a couple of hours with Glenn in order to cover as much as I had planned, but I thought that was quite worthy. I think I did well there. If I learned anything from the chat with Steve Harris, it's that sometimes you've just got to get on with things, and I don't give a fuck about negative feedback from people who aren't invested in the show. But I know some of you do listen to the show, each episode that gets posted, and I'm just letting you know that I did learn from my chat with Steve that when there's not the opportunity to have a conversation, when it's more of a Quanda-style situation as that chat was, as indeed the first chat was with Steve, it's good to have a myriad of topics available to talk about. Because God knows with Steve, even though I spent about 50 minutes with him all told. Like with Glenn, you need a couple of hours to get to the bottom of all of the things. And even then, I think you're only just touching the sides. But anyway, I do my best. You regular listeners know that. All right, if you are new to the show, go across to Scars and Guitars and check out all of the conversations. In particular, I like to talk to members of bands under the broader banners of heavy metal and extreme metal. Occasionally I branch out into pop, rock and punk, but really the bread and butter of the show is heavy and extreme metal. I hope you like what it is. I hope you like what it is that I do based on all of the episodes you can see on the website. That's it from me. My name's Andrew Mackay-Smith. I host the show Scars and Guitars. Until the next one, it's a goodbye for now.